Wagwan, Wagwan people. This is Kiss Share, the Gaming Nation. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the video. And to today's topic, we talk about who has weak game and who don't have game. A lot of times you go on this YouTube, internet, any social media, people use "you don't got no game" on a subjective level, not an objective level. What's that mean? Because on the subjective level, relative to whoever the person is spitting the game, they're going to spit to you what game is according to them. You understand? And then they're going to shame you into thinking the way they think and manipulate you into thinking the way they think, right? Which is nothing wrong with that. No, hold on. Excuse me. Let me fix that up. See, there's nothing wrong with having subjective game relative to yourself, so long as you're not trying to manipulate or shame other people into believing what you believe in. Now, if you're being challenged and your game is being challenged, by all means, defend yourself. Defend your reasons why you're doing what you're doing. You understand? Especially if whatever game that's subjective or relative to you is successful for you, and you're successful in life, whether it become to getting money, women and dating, whatever. All right. Because when you talk about game is life, and it's centered around how a man plays the game to win, right? But when it talks about the game objectively, the game objectively is how basically the truth about the game, and how all of us have to operate within the game to contribute to the game, so the game can keep functioning and running. And when it comes to the world of men, we are more objective. We have to. We have no other choice because objectivity is reality. And regardless how we want to be in our subjective individual lives, when we walk outside, the objective truth is going to hit us in the face. All right. So let's begin. Who has game and who doesn't? Who has game versus who doesn't? Defining game. When we talk about the game, we're not just talking about dating or women. Game is life. Every man is playing the game of life because we live in a man's world built by men. Game is the strategy, the wisdom, the lessons, the decisions you use to navigate the world. Everything is game. Now the question is, who has strong game and who has weak game? That's where we break it down today. Right? Weak game. This is what. So before going to that, weak game. It's what see a lot of you player max pimps, non-traditional niggas do. You're in a house built by traditional men. And you're in that house shaming those men to operate like you. And because they don't operate like you, something is wrong with them and not you for being in their house, disrespecting their house, and shaming them in their own house. And their house is obviously more successful than you because their traditional house is what built up America to be the superpower of the world that everybody wants to come to. So you guys who are shaming traditional men for the rules that they set for themselves and how they expect their women to be, you're in rebellion to those men, and you're teaching the women to rebel against this household. And then when those men come and check you, you get mad at them men and say, "Why you player hate?" Yeah, I see you. I see what y'all niggas is doing. Anyway, strong societies are built on rules, traditions, and order set by men who created them. And for those who are going to be smart about this traditional thing, and I've heard you niggas do this, not all traditional stuff is bad, right? There are plenty of societies that are traditional, whether it be the Victorian era context, whether it be Great Britain's context, whether it be even amongst Vikings context, even if it's amongst the tradition as far as Genghis Khan. All these places had massive success. Say what you want about Genghis Khan, but he was conquering and whooping people's ass, like him or not. What's going on? Thank you. Like him or not, right? So, cannot be. So, because a lot of smart niggas on the internet like to talk about, the tradition. Back in the caveman day, that's tradition. No, fool. When in America's context, when we talk about traditional stuff, we're referring to The Victorian era up into the 1950s. So for you smart motherfuckers in the back seat. Anyway, let's get it. In Western culture, traditional men built their house around monogamy, structured families, and the idea that wives must meet certain expectations to be marriage worthy. At the same time, they had systems, brothels, 304s, and mistresses for separating recreation from respectability. Whether you agree or not, that was their system, their game plan. Key point: a man has weak game if he enters another man's house or society and then shames the rules of that house, siding with rebellious women against the man who built it. In the world of men, if you don't like how the king rules his castle, you have only got two options: conquer it or leave it and build your own. Which really, that's three options. What you don't do is complain about the rules of the house you did not build. Said again, you don't complain about the rules of the house you don't build. Now let's go into the third line I said. At the same time, their systems brought the L304's mistress for separating recreation from respectability. Whether you agree with it or not, that was their system. That was their game plan. So let me break that down. Put my face on the screen. A lot of you dudes, what you dudes will do is you'll get on the internet and you'll say, I've heard a lot of player and game and Mac niggas say this. Well, it's you men's fault because you said you want traditional women. But when you go on the dating market, you'll tell these women, well, you'll smash a chick who's easy on the first day, but you won't wife her up. And then because the women are in response to that, the women pretend to be wives while lying that they're 3 or 4. You exposed yourself. See, if I go to work for, let's say, McDonald's, and McDonald's read my resume and they hired me, and I, during the interview process, I said I can do A, B, C, and D, right? And then I lie about who I am to get that job, and then come to find out I suck, pause, I'm trash at the job. That's not McDonald's fault. It's my fault for lying about who I was and not being able to perform the job that I told them that I can, or they expected me to perform. Now, where it will be their fault now is if they keep me in that on their workplace, now knowing that I'm not who I said I was or what they expected me to be. Right? But it's not their fault for me lying. It's not the men's fault for setting a standard and then the women disobeying that standard that the men set. See, you game niggas and you Mac niggas, you train the women to rebel against the men. When you say surface brain, surface level, surfboard, egghead bullshit like that. Oh, you men, you said that I forgot how y'all niggas say that shit. Because I don't repeat that when I date, so I forgot how y'all niggas say it again. Y'all will say shit like when you men are dating with these women and you openly say, the woman who was willing to give up the box on the first day, you just treat her for fun. And then the women who make you wait, that's the ones you wife up. Well, dumbasses, for the dumb motherfuckers in the back. That was based on traditional standards that was already set from the Victorian era. Like I told you, right? The 304s and the brothel were people, women, they were set for recreational use and purposes. They weren't wifed up. Because during the Victorian era, the women who were not engaging in that 304 activity or whore activity, they were considered the lowest of the level of women in that society. Where opposed to the women that was sexually chaste and she was a virgin, those were the women that was valued. Because during the Victorian age, you didn't have contraceptives, you didn't have condoms or anything like that. So the only way a man can secure his legacy or a man could secure some proper with a proper woman was that she had to be sexually chaste, get a virgin, right? Because now if another man imprinted his seed or his sperm into that woman, he got her pregnant. You know what I'm saying? And in a lot of the Victorian era, it was based off biblical stuff and Bible stuff, right? So women were seen as property. For a smart, dumbass feminist bitch in the back sitting, when you were the man's property, it put him in more of a problem because he took full responsibility over your autonomy. And anything that bad or wrong happened to you, they looked at him and punished him for something. So for the feminist bitches that's going to watch this in the back row of the class, right? You keep saying that patriarchy was bad to you, but patriarchy condemned the men when they did something bad to you during the time where it was more patriarchal. If he was overly abusive, if a man was overly abusive to the woman and shit like that, right? So for dumb motherfuckers in the back. All right, so let's go back to it. Key point. A man was weak game. So I hope I broke down at the same time. I hope I broke down the second one, right? Now, again, this is how these men built their society, and this is how they did the value that they have for their women. Whether I agree with it or not, or you game Mac niggas agree to it or not, who the fuck is you and I to go tell them and shame them about how they run their house, especially if their house is more successful? America, again, is the superpower of the world. We the king, nigga. So obviously, and everybody, a Jamaican society, they follow that. They had success with it. Everybody that engaged in that system, Victorian era system, society's roles, America just so happened to be the most successful of it. So who the fuck is I? And who the fuck is you game niggas, player niggas, and Mac niggas out there to tell the men of the house that something is wrong with them when they have more successful in monogamy and built a structure of house that your ass benefit from? Who the fuck is you and I to tell them kings or the rulers of their house how to reign in their damn kingdom? Who are y'all? And me. Obviously, I don't disagree with it. But who am I to challenge it? Who am I to say that there's something wrong with them? Who are you? See, niggas out here talking about you got game, and you talk about masculinity along with it, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You just rebounded the game to fit your devices and your fuckery while being in rebellion in the house that your ass don't help to build and you not contributing to maintain. You're just talking shit online. Let's get to it. I wanted to say something about that whole system. See, the reason why the Victorian era men created that system, it was based off of capitalism, right? So in capitalism now, it says that the people that raise to the top and raise get the best out of life. And you have to give incentives to human beings to be the best out of life. But men understood still that you had different tiers of men and women. Like, so example, the gentleman. Not every man was a gentleman during that era. To be a gentleman, it was a lot of standards. To be a lady, it was a lot of standards. But in order to reward the best people, you have to give them the best incentives. So the men who were gentlemen and had the most resources and success had the access to the best of the women. And in order for the best of the women to have access to the best of the men, they had their duties and their roles to do. Right? That's capitalism right there. So what did that do? It kept the women in check and said, shit, you see, if I'm a brothel worker 304, I'm not going to get access to the best of mine with the most resources. Because whatever you subjective niggas want to talk about, the rules of attraction and all that goofiness, right? Which I understand that part. Not saying I don't understand that part of the game. Women objectively are still attracted to resources and status and all that other good stuff. That's how they're wired. Before my time, before you niggas' time, that's gonna judge this video. Put your comments in the chat with your fuckery. Right? That's just how women are wired. You can't fight that. You can't fight human nature. Like, you know what I'm saying? That's how they're wired. Now, when it comes to the rule of attraction, which is the glue, in my opinion, I think a woman being attracted, well, the attraction goes both ways, right? Not just from women and men. Being attracted to each other or desiring each other, that's the glue, or the first part of the glue. Then comes the love, the work you put in for each other. Then comes the respect. And the woman has to not only, first, she has to be attracted to you. Then she loves you, chooses to follow you. Then she has to respect how you are. She has to respect your authority, your rules, your regulations, and how you reign in your kingdom. Right? So peep game on that. So I understand those first levels, but objectively, women like men with resources. I don't care what women are talking about with feminism. They're still in a. I don't care how they want to talk about where we're decentering men. Women are still in a society getting money from jobs and opportunities that men create for them. By the way, if Angry Man ever sees this video, or Tommy Sotomayor ever sees this video, or anybody who's more intelligent than me sees this video, peep game. If you notice, a lot of women on TikTok are talking about decentering men, decentralizing men. That sounds very Marxist and communist in nature. And it also sounds like a threat when they say decentering. It sounds to me like you want to decapitate men, or like, which makes no sense. When a woman says you're decentering men, that's like the moon and the earth talking about they're going to decenter the sun. You're in the sun's universe. And the reason why the planet and the moon, or there's light in the moon, is because the moon is reflecting the light off the sun, off the energy from the sun. The reason why life exists on the planet is because of the sun and the energy from the sun. In other words, the earth and the moon spin because of the sun's light. And the sun is a masculine energy. Earth and the moon are feminine energies. So in other words, and us humans, we are microcosm of the universe. So the women on earth, they spin like the earth because of our light that we shine on them. So when they talking about decentering men, I don't know how you gonna do that. You do that, you might be asked out. Right? Anyway, but Angry Man, peep game on that if you ever see this video. Right? Let's continue. Real game. Creating real force and structure. A man with real game either plays by the rules of the structure he lives under, or builds his own structure that others respect. Real game is trying to enjoy the benefits of a house without respecting the order that keeps it standing. Example: a man who wants to access women but also supports a rebellion against male authority is biting the same hand that feeds them. He's siding with dysfunction because he lacks the strength to either enforce order or create his own. See, that's the difference between real power and fake influence, because influence without structure always collapses. Let me break that down. See, one of the things I like about ChatGPT, because I put my own thoughts into ChatGPT and it organized them for me. What I used to do was I used to write paragraphs about my ideas, and then I would go on the internet, I would go to the libraries, I would read books to fact check my thoughts, and then I'd further break it down. ChatGPT helps me further do that. Let me go back to it. And because I use ChatGPT because I have ADHD, so I don't always remember my thoughts. So before, when I early on YouTube, I used to write my stuff down and I have big books of things that I wrote down and fact check by research and stuff, and I've structured it and then come on YouTube and read it to help me remember what I said. All right. When I said always collapses, and then I said a man who wants access to women but also supports a rebellion against male authority is biting the same hand that feeds. He's siding with dysfunction because he lacks the strength or either to enforce. So let me break down what I said in that example first. So a nigga has weak game when he is now shaming men for enforcing his own standards in his own society, in his own house, and has an expectation for how he wants the women who benefit from his house to live up to. A man has weak game when he's doing that, when he's shaming those men. Right? Let me go back to the thing. So you know how a lot of game niggas and Mac niggas and player niggas on the YouTube always talk about I forgot the shit they like. They love to say this shit. This one shit is a common thing they love saying. They love saying, let me go back to the thing. Oh, he says that you lack game when you hold women accountable. Well, maybe he lacks the game because he can't enforce accountability and he can't hold women accountable. Maybe the women don't see him valuable enough to be held to want accountability from that guy. I'm gonna say that again. Maybe the niggas, the players, the max, and the game niggas that's saying to you men that you're weak because you hold women accountable, maybe it's they're weak because they lack the game to enforce accountability or to hold women accountable. Or maybe the women don't see them as valuable to want them to hold to want those men to hold them accountable. See, women want accountability from men. Women, regardless of the shit they say, they want accountability from the men. It's just that they want the men who they value to hold them accountable. And what's holding them accountable? See, if a woman knows she ain't shit, how you hold her accountable? Dismiss her ass. Because she understands that's going to help her do better for the next nigga. I'm going to say that again. Women who ain't shit want accountability. So when you dismiss her ass, she can step up her game for the next nigga. I'm going to say the other parts again, too. The niggas who tell you, men, that you're weak in your game and you're insecure and all the other bullshit for holding women accountable, maybe they're weak in their game and they're insecure in their game because they lack the game to hold women accountable and to enforce accountability onto the women. And then maybe the women don't find them valuable to want accountability from them. Moving on. Got that. Shout out to what's his brother name who says it? Country Rain. Let that shit sizzle in your spirit. Hold on. Make it big upon your grill. Make it cooking on your pot. You understand? Oh. See, that's the difference between real power and fake influence because influence without structure always collapses. Now, what I mean when I say that, a man's influence goes as far as the structure he creates in his society. In other words, if you want to influence monogamy and you want to push family, the structure has to reflect the influence you push in. But if you have another influence that's destroying your structure, like open relationships, non-monogamy niggas, player niggas, Mac niggas teaching the women to rebel against your structure and tear down your structure, your influence is not going to be as heavy. Because the woman has to see the tangible benefits or the tangible things. So, example, if you want to this house, if you're telling a woman that you want to influence her to you want to go buy a house and move in the house, what happens if she moves with you and she don't see the house you bought? She's not gonna believe in your influence. But then if you say, yo, baby, I bought me a house and we gonna move into that shit, and then she sees the house that you're moving into, then she believes in your influence. But you can't enforce an influence if there's no structure that reflects the rules that you want to enforce. And what a lot of player mat game niggas do is that they teach the women to rebel against your structure and then tear down your structure. Hence, you have no influence. It's a tactic that a lot of player niggas do. Fucked up tactic, but they do it. Say you and your girl had an argument or something, and because women are very fickle, right? I mean, say you doing 90% of the things right, and you just have one argument that day over the dishes or some shit, or the garbage not taken out or some bullshit. She'll go out there, run out there, and she has a feeling she got nobody to talk to. So a player nigga, he'll convince her that that small thing argument that you had with that she had with you is actually a big thing. And off that he'll convince her to cheat on you. And then when it's said and done, he'll blame you for why that situation failed when it wasn't really your fault. The fault was that woman was in rebellion against you and what you wanted her to do. She should have chose, just like Eve in the garden, to defer back to her man when the player, the serpent, was trying to convince her to cheat and eat the apple. But she didn't do that. You understand? So really and truly, it was the woman's fault for putting her position to follow somebody else's influence, and it was the player's fault for stabbing you in the back and violating your third territory. And how they do it to shame you from checking them from doing it, they call you simp. They say you're insecure. They'll say shit like, "Why you player hating and she chose me, nigga?" But he helped to fuck up your home. But what they do is they defang the snake. In martial arts, we call it defang the snake, where you destroy that person's defenses so they can't defend themselves. So it's easier to beat them up. That's what they do. Let's go here. Weak game equals pandering. So you simple bears. Simple bears is what I call y'all. Weak game, men pander. They shame traditional men to gain favor with rebellious women. They redefine masculinity to suit their own insecurities or vices. They protect dysfunction because it benefits them in the short term. This is weak because it betrays the masculine principle. Men set standards, women follow. Once you flip that, the man has lost control of his own game. And that's the thing. Real game isn't about pandering, it's about leadership. Because without leadership, there's no respect. So let me break this down. I said they protect dysfunction because it benefits them in the short term. What I mean when I say that, a lot of niggas that's telling y'all open relationships and all this other stuff and not to focus on everybody, focus on yourself. And I'm gonna break that down later on. They're saying that to you because a lot of these niggas they don't believe in the future. They don't believe 10 chess moves ahead. They're selfish to themselves. They're for the here and now. Right? So let's go into it. When I say because the short term thing is now they get easy access from the women up front in the game, right? And what's the dysfunction? The dysfunction is women giving up their box to men who don't qualify, and then the men who don't qualify now look at that as success. Who's the men who don't qualify? The men who are unproductive, the men who are lazy and are your pookies and your rays. So now those men shame traditional niggas so they can keep the rebellious women give open box for them now. So let me break this down, right? Let me lose black culture. See, black men and black culture, the reason why we couldn't be traditional in the past, like I want to say, we was traditional in the past. Like when you talk about like the 1950s or whatsoever, there was traditional in essence. But when we talk about traditional as far as the financial part of it, paying 100%, right? Let's look at the 19th century, like from the early 1900s up until 1950, feminism, then the 80s and the 90s. You got to remember, black men after slavery were trying to fight to put together some kind of patriarchy in their own house. And because of a lot of the fights they had to endure from white people at that time, Jim Crow, their towns being burnt down by hateful ass white people or whatsoever. Black men couldn't focus properly on doing these things because there were so many things in the environment attacking them. It was hostile for them, for our forebears, even Caribbean forebears, right? A lot of the slavery that went on in Haiti and Jamaica and the rebellions that took place over there. So, and then the same thing here amongst Black Americans, right? And the whole African diaspora, all of us, right? So because of that, it set us back, and we couldn't really be traditional as far as the financial part, especially when you go to the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. You understand? A lot of shit was rocking us. 94 crime bill, NAFTA, a lot of things were set in motion, preventing black men from getting true capital. And really enforcing, like I said earlier, if you want to influence your woman, you got to have the structure that reflects your influence. So black men couldn't influence traditionalism because they couldn't create the structure for lack of financial capital. Right? So what happened? Look at the Vietnam War that happened. When a lot of black men went to go fight off in the war, a lot of playing Mac niggas, those were the ones who were left to basically father the community in a negative way. This is where all the player and the Mac influence, all that shit came in. And a lot of those black men who would have been there to prevent the player, to prevent the Mac, to prevent the dope dealing, they all went to go fight in the war. And then by the time they came back fucked up and they got high, right? Then you take it to now the 80s with the crack and the drug era, right? That rocked us, right? Then you take it to NAFTA and the 94 crime bill. That rocked us. So black men were fighting to create structure in those times, right? So because of that, the player and the Mac and the gang banging, all of that stuff seeped into the culture. And it became the dominant influence in the culture, right? And even though during the 80s and the 90s, where you had sitcoms and black programs like the Fresh Princes and the Martin Lawrences, and which Martin Lawrence actually showed a different type of black relationship, right? Where you had Gina as a corporate American chick, and Martin, I think he was a DJ, right? Both of them highly successful, basically doing 50-50. I think it was. I think he had his own, if I remember correctly, he had his own apartment, I think. All right. But that was a type of relationship that was successful in those 90s. I remember growing up, a lot of my relatives, female relatives and male relatives, who were, working or had a job, especially the females, they got into relationships like that, right? And then you had the brothers like Rock, right? Then you had plenty of black sitcom shows that showed you black family, right? Then you had the pro blacks, the Hotep niggas, the conscious community, Sarnetta and them, the Hebrew Israelites, various different black consciousness preaching, because what people don't realize that the conscious community was black men trying to bring in the reins of their community and take ownership of their culture, right? But regardless of that, we were still getting rocked. But now in 2025, that black men are no longer under the same threat that they were. They're able to enforce traditional masculinity. They're able to build the structure, the capital to have the structure now and influence the structure. So now the structure can reflect their influence. But the problem is, by this time, most black men raised by their mama are used to 304s because their mamas was 304s. And the culture has been dominated by the play and Mac stuff. So now, if you're like a Kevin Samuels or an Angry Man or Tommy Sotomayor and you're trying to enforce traditionalism, the culture is going to rebound and attack you. You understand? So this is what I mean when I say they shame traditional men to gain favor with rebellious women. Who's the they? The they in black culture is the black men who were pimp players and Macs, right? And they were gaining favor because black women chose feminism and other stuff that they wasn't supposed to choose, like being a 304 and prostitutes and all the other bullshit. Then they redefined what masculinity was to suit their own vices. So they redefined masculinity based off of the lens of a player, Mac or pimp, and not a traditional male. Because player, Mac, and pimp gets easier access to the rebellious women that's already rebellion. Because remember, in the 70s, it was the hippie love shit, free love era shit. You understand? Which was Marxism, by the way, for those who don't know. Go look that up. A lot of people during the 70s, if you look them up, a lot of them are Marxist, socialists, or communists. Go peep the game, right? So, and then what you see the players doing, they're basically gatekeeping the 304s. Like how a traditional nigga would protect a traditional lady or good woman, the players are doing the inverse of that. So now if you're a traditional man and you're shaming a 304 and you're holding women accountable, the player Mac nigga, he's going to now come out and attack you because you're fucking with his bitches. You're fucking with his access. That's what that is. This is weak because it betrays a masculine principle. Men set standards, women follow. Once you flip that, the man has lost control of his own game. So this, what's the game? This betrays the standards that traditional black men were trying to set in their community. And other black men teaching black women to rebel against those men. So those other men, so when they say it's always a man's fault, in this context, and I'm gonna break it down this way, it's the man's fault because other black men taught black women to rebel against the traditional black men so they can have easier access to pussy in the box economy. Sorry for being raw like that, but I gotta be raw like that, right? And that's the thing. Real game isn't about pandering, it's about leadership, because without leadership, there is no respect, right? And what's leadership? Setting standards for women to follow. Let me say this too. The standards that I follow for myself is not going to be the same standards I set for my woman to follow. In other words, the standards that I do construction, that's set for the foreman to follow, it's not going to be the same standards that he enforces for the construction workers or the grunts in the field to follow, because they have different functions and roles. If OSHA authority goes on that site and they see that foreman picking up hammers and doing the same shit that the regular construction workers are doing, they're going to shut down that site because the foreman is not in order. He's not doing his thing. The foreman's job is to enforce the rules and make sure you're not coming on the site with improper PPE gear. You're not coming on the site disobeying OSHA authority's rules. That's his job. So he cannot do what the regular construction workers is doing. That's not his function. His job is to make sure that everything is going according to plan. So the standards are set for the foreman. It's not the same standards that is set for the construction workers regular and that he has to enforce for the construction workers. It's the hierarchy. That's why I laugh at you black niggas who's using that feminist shit. Talk about a man gotta lead by an example. You ever see a king fucking milking cows? You ever see a Damu, a lord of feudal Japan, sitting up there fighting with the samurai? Or is he telling the samurai to go chop somebody head off? He's not chopping no head off. He's sitting there chilling fucking bitches, telling everybody else what to do. Go there, so you go over there. Now, does that Damu or that king has to work himself into that position, or that foreman? Yes, because that foreman was once a construction worker first, and he had to climb his way to that position. That's how hierarchy of men work. But once he got to that position, he's no longer doing the same shit he was doing when he was a grunt. That's how that works. So a lot of you feminist identifying game niggas, Marxist game niggas, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And I see what y'all doing. Tied in masculinity and using feminist manipulation tactics. Using what a woman thinking. They claim y'all not equal to women. King's choice. In the world of men, the metaphor is kingdom. Strong game equals building and defending your own kingdom. Weak game is running inside another man's kingdom, demanding they change their rules for you. The true treasure of a man's game is whether he can establish order in his own house, his own life, his own relationship. And that brings us full circle. Because in life, just like in game, every man is playing to win, but only the man who enforces structure, respect, and order can actually call himself a player to the game. So for to you players, niggas, and I'm no player, I'm no game god, nigga. I'm none of that. I just know how to play the game. But technically, I would be a player if I know how to play the game. But I'm not in a player in other niggas' context, right? Your game is weak if you're on this internet shaming niggas, traditional niggas, because they won't follow your path, and because they want to enforce the house that their forebearers and their ancestors built. And they want to contribute to that society that was built that you benefit from, and they want themselves and their children to benefit from. Your game is weak. Let's get it. So when we ask who has game and who doesn't, it's simple. The man who respects the house he's in or builds his own, that man has game. The one who whines, panders, and tears down the other man's rules inside their own house, that man never had game to begin with. Because game is life, and life always respects the man who can build, rule, and defend his house. Now, I would have no issue with the niggas who want to be in open relationships, fuck culture. You want to fuck till your heart stops, till your dick fall off, or your pussy can't ride dick no more. I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't care, because we're in America, land of the free liberties and shit, right? The Constitution protects everybody's right to do that. But also, if you guys weren't insulting the men in the house, and then you weren't going to go violate those men's relationships by fucking his wife, I would have no issue with what y'all do. I wouldn't be speaking in this camera right now. But every man in these spaces is afraid to challenge this shit directly. I'd have no issue. If that's what y'all want to do, but you're not violating, you are finding women that want to do what you want to do, and you are violating the other men and insulting their men in their house, in America's house, I'd have no issue. Let's get it. Who has game? Who doesn't? Black culture and weak game, which I discussed earlier. Last time I broke down how man has weak game when he disrespects the house men built. Now let's talk about black culture, because here the game has been flipped upside down, and this flip is exactly why a lot of brothers don't recognize who really has game and who doesn't. Natural order versus cultural disorder. In tradition, the man who climbed the mountain, the builder, the conqueror, the provider, got the most access to women. Shout out to the Angry Man, right? Because I put this together based upon something he said. The Angry Man talked about how the men have to climb that mountain to get access to the woman. Now, some of you niggas in the background, you know what I'm saying, gonna look like I ain't simping for no woman. No, it's not about the woman. It's about you and the climb. See, you climbing that mountain, you have to now develop certain climbing skills, certain thinking patterns, critical thinking and reasoning to get up there. You understand? So while you're climbing that mountain and you're learning and you're progressing, you're getting access to new information and to new knowledge and to new success and new benefits the higher in the hierarchy you go. Right? So now that you gain this access by product or benefit, you get access to the best type of woman. Capitalism. Angry Man, like you like how I innovated your shit, nigga. I said it's not about the woman at the top of the mountain. It's about you and that climb and what you had to do to get to that mountain. Because in the world of men, men respect power. Men respect accomplishments. So you getting that woman is a byproduct of what you have accomplished. That woman is with you because of what you've accomplished. You're not with her because she's up there. She's with you because of what you've accomplished. And that's your reward. Just like if I go out there and I work to get a car, get enough money to get a car, get money in general. Now orders that car. But I had to put work into, I had to put myself into the work. I had to gain the knowledge and the skill necessary to get the money to get the car. You understand? But it's not about the car. It's about what you and the work you put in, the effort. Think about that. In tradition, women naturally flock to influence, power, and stability. That's how it's always been. But in Black culture, it's backwards. The achievers, the men producing, building, and doing right, get labeled lame, square, or sucker. Meanwhile, the lower tier, non-productive, reckless men get the most access to women. And that didn't just happen by accident. That came from Black culture that celebrated weak game as if it's strong. And I think I broke that down earlier, right? I'm going to break it down again. So what considered to be weak game? Well, when you're talking about traditionalism, weak game would be player-machism. Weak game would be non-monogamy. Weak game will be open relationships. Weak game will be non-traditional. Why? Because you're in a society where their house and their game relative to them operates off of monogamy, structure, and etc. So anything that goes in rebellion against that is weak game. You feel me? Relative to how they run their house. Now, when you talk about Black culture, right? The niggas that are Pookies and Ray Rays. Now let me speak objectively with the whole player Mac and pimp thing. Not every player of Mac you see is being dishonest or shaming traditional niggas. Not every player of Mac you see is a Pookie or Ray Ray. You understand? Right? Player in general objectivity, he could be monogamous, he could be open relationship. Is just a player who has successful in the context of women. You understand? Right? And how he gets to successful because he played the game enough when it comes to women that he gained enough. Remember when I tell you, a lot of niggas say this, so shout out to the game niggas right there. I'm just innovating off based upon what I've learned growing up in East New York, Brooklyn, from the hood with the niggas that I moved with, and other niggas online, right? They say the game is not about the woman, it's about you. Well, the game is not about dating. The game is not about the car you want to buy. The game is about you and how you want to attain it, right? So a lot of players, because they're dating women, they're seeing the patterns, the strategies, and they're formulating that based upon who they are to get what they want. Right. So shout out to the players out there that's doing what they're supposed to be doing. If you're a player out here and you're not shaming traditional niggas, I'm not banging on you. You understand? So what happens when it comes to shit? I forgot what I was gonna say. Shit, that's that ADHD kicking in. This is why I have to go back to this, right? Okay, so in Black culture, the lowest tier of men that we call Pookie and Ray Ray, and white culture, you call them Trailer Trash Brad, Trailer Park Brad, City Boy Jonathan. See, we got to start creating some words and attach them to white men who are low tier that be fucking white women and getting them pregnant and turn them into baby mamas. We got to do that because they keep using Pookie and Ray Ray. But anyway, in Black culture, Pookie and Ray Ray, the only thing they can produce is dick and problems. That's it. All right. But because in our culture, because there was lack of fathership and leadership there, because of how we were being under attack, right? Women fell to the influence of those low tier men. And because of feminism was there, teaching the women how to be 304s, they also looked towards those men. And then you had the welfare state, and then women having to get pregnant by the lower tier dudes to get babies, to get access to WIC and EBT. Women I think Angry Man broke something down to that effect on the show, right? Um, but he was like, and I agree to this because I grew up in East New York, Brooklyn, and I seen it. So when he broke it down, I'm like, oh shit, right? A lot of black women, because they engage into that type of lifestyle, they only learn how to follow the influence of the Pookie and the Ray Ray that they choose to follow, right? So because those group of men who are not producing anything, who are not conquering, who are not creating structure, have been getting the access to the most box. I don't care from what black woman you want to tell me about. I don't care who, right? And then you add, in addition, you add into the player Mac thing, right? And then you're shaming the actual producers of society. The women are not going to value the men who actually made it to the mountaintop of our culture. They're going to value the men that never even made the climb to the mountaintop. They're stuck at the bottom. So because of that in our culture, right, it flipped on top of its head. And then there's Marxism there because now Marxism says everybody's equal. And what that does is now because everybody's equal, you don't value, um, you don't see a reason or an incentive to work to separate yourself to get the best out of life because you think everything is equal. So there's a lot of things in there that I can't really put in a, like, if I were to break it down on that subject alone, I'd go for 4 hours, right? So let's go. Right? That's the backwardness in our culture. The pin player influence and the square label. So I'm breaking down how in this slide how the traditional man got how the pimps and the players condition the women or flip the community upside down. Right? In pimp player culture, square was never really an insult. It meant the average man, usually more traditional, who wanted a wife and stability. Pimps would use 3 or 4 to extract money from squares. That's where the slander started. Over time, that culture seeped into the wider black community. The productive men became the butt of the joke. The responsible man became corny, and chasing dysfunction became the new standard. Right. So what happened? The weaker men rebounded the game in their favor. Yes, I said the pimp, the player, and the Pookie and Ray Rays are the weaker men of the culture. I said it. And I say that because you're in rebellion to the traditional structure that black men wanted to start. And then you're teaching the women to rebel against that structure. So that's why you're the weakest of the men. Dirty Mackin against high value men. Lower tier men benefit when women rebel against traditional masculine standards. They shame high value men by calling them lames, tricks, or simps, undermining the principle that men set standards and women must qualify. Why? Because if women actually align with the high value, productive men, only the best women, ladies, wives, women of discipline would qualify. That means the 3 or 4s would get filtered out. Men without resources or character would get exposed. The culture would return to fathers and patriarchs protecting daughters, meaning no more easy access. So weaker men fight to keep the box economy alive because that's the only way they can compete, right? So in other words, the only way lower tier men can compete for access to women is if there's no traditional standard there and there's no patriarchal men to maintain that standard, which is Marxism, by the way, right? Marxism wants to get rid of patriarchy so that they can have easy access to influence the women and the children. Give me 1 second. I will be right back. Hopefully, I'm not too long. Pause. Okay, people. Sorry about that. I am back. Had to handle something. All right, so dirty market. My fault. Low-tier men benefit when women rebel against traditional masculine standards. They shame high-value men by calling them lames, tricks, or simps, undermining the principle that men set standards and women must qualify. So when they say lames or tricks or simps, because in Black culture we like to take words and apply them to well, not even just Black culture. A lot of white men in the manosphere, even with the whole alpha and beta concept, they just take these things and apply it to whatever subjective bullshit or whatever. But when it comes to Black culture, as I described with the pimp player thing earlier, lame, when you're calling somebody a lame or a trick or a simp, has become a way to emasculate men that think a certain way. So it's used to shame men into thinking how you want them to think. Part of the unspoken Negro contract. So now, if you're a traditional guy and you like monogamy and you expect certain things out your woman, they're gonna call you a lame or a trick or a simp or whatever. Now, what does that do? Women will hear that, and the programming that goes on to their brain was like, damn, if other Black men are calling this nigga a trick or a simp or a sucker, I'm gonna think he's a trick or a simp or a sucker, and I'm not gonna respect him. You understand? Now, he may not be a trick or a simp or a sucker or a lame. He may not fit any of that. But then again, according to Black culture, you're lame if you like tradition. You're lame if you like video games. You're lame if you don't like going outside, gang banging or hugging the block. So a lot of things that's considered a lame in Black culture is actually a productive human being in society. And what's considered a real nigga, a real man in Black culture is a nigga that go to jail and gang bang and sell dope and broke and lazy. So go figure. But yeah, basically, they shame the high value man or the concept. Shout out to Kevin Samuels. They shame that concept because when Kevin Samuels broke it down, it actually gave it a traditional standard. And then he was checking the women because with that traditional standard, you're the king in your household, and you get to dictate how the women qualify to gain entry into your house. So you became, as they say, the gatekeeper to that relationship, right? Now, like I said, the weaker men shamed it. All over YouTube, I remember that. He was hated for that concept. After he was dead, niggas said a lot of shit about that concept. You know? And the reason being is because now it exposes them. And if the women actually work towards getting to that dude, a lot of niggas would have lost access to box. It would have actually exposed the weaker men. But again, with Black culture now, because the pimp player, that became the pseudo patriarchy in Black culture. The player Mac and the pimp, became the influence, the dominant influence, right? Because of what I said happened to Black men during those times earlier, which the Nation of Islam was trying to correct it. The conscious community was trying to correct it. The problem with the conscious community is that they had a lot of matriarchal feminism and Marxist shit going over there. So, a lot of those men in that space got undermined or usurped or tricked into following certain things. Single mothers, no patriarchy, and false equality. A lot of weaker men benefit from fatherless homes in Black culture. Without a father, there's no gatekeeper. That's why weak game men encourage rebellion. They don't want women respecting the father standard or the builder standard. This creates false system where broke, unproductive men still get sexual access. Women mistake rebellion for freedom, and traditional men get shamed for expecting standards. And when you think about it, so this is me tying into Marxism. That's Marxism at its core. Everybody equal, no standards, no hierarchy. That's the masculinity. That's weak game disguised as progress, right? Because remember, the idea of Karl Marx is that he didn't want, what did he say? The proletariat is going to rebel against, I forget what he called the rich classes, and he wanted to get rid of that structure to make it even out for the weaker people. Well, the problem with Karl Marx's idea, right, is that there is no true equality in life. There's going to be people that outdo you and who's better than you all the time. What that does is now when the weaker person sees that the other person is achieving and getting access, the weaker person is going to say, you know what, I want something similar to what he has, and I want to get rewarded, so I'm going to do more effort or compete against him. So Karl Marx was a weaker man. I'm just going to say, and all you men and player max, that you need to check your game, because a lot of you are moving based upon a lot of Marxists that came into America and preached that stuff into American society. Look at a lot of the Marxist people that was preaching, hippie love during the 70s and free love and all that other shit. Go look that up. A lot of those people were Marxists. All right. And Marxism does not like masculinity, it doesn't like patriarchy, and it doesn't like capitalism. So let's keep it real. A man has weak game when he teaches women to rebel against the very men who built, conquered, and reproduced. That's not game. That's survival off scraps, because real game is building, setting standards, and leading. Anything else is just weak men dirty macking for the box. Who has game? Who doesn't? Right? Weak game equals not being who you are. Oh, and I can't wait to break this down. All right? So we already talked about weak game in terms of disrespecting the house men built. We talked about weak game when weaker men shame builders and producers. But now let's break down another form of weak game. Now being honest about who you are and trying to rebrand other men's house to fit your lifestyle, which is the biggest disrespect to masculinity when men do that. But I see a lot of you on the internet doing. Real game. Being direct about who you are. If you're into open relationships, sex culture, non-monogamy, say that. If you're a player, say that. If you're a traditional man, say that. A man with strong game doesn't hide behind mixed messages. He represents himself clearly so people know what he represents every time they see him. The problem is that too many men with weak game hide behind dishonesty. Now, why is this important for masculinity and manhood, right? Because in men, we deal in reality, right? And in men, in the world of men, we're punished for lying and being dishonest, because our dishonesty can fuck shit up. Our dishonesty can destroy stuff. You know what I'm saying? You need not being honest about, you telling somebody to go to the store, and then you don't say that, the police is at the store, or some kind of shooting is going at the store, or some kind of, something bad is at the store, and you're not honest with that person. The person goes to the store and something bad happens. And because men, our responsibility is building and maintaining society, I have to be honest about the type of concrete that I need to mix so that these bricks can go in that concrete and keep the structure of this house going for 20 years to 100 years. I got to be honest about how to build a car or the components that go into building a car. I got to be honest about these things. Because if I'm dishonest about that car and that car goes and crash and kills people, you know what I'm saying? That's a reflection of me. Because I'm producing the product, and I'm supposed to produce a product that is safe for people to use. You understand? So men have to be honest about what they're selling, who they are in their product, so that we can be held accountable for when something is being produced from us that's fucking up the environment. Right? So this is why men have to be honest about things. I see a lot of men, they're not honest about who they are. They're not honest about, yo, I'm a player. Or, yo, I'm into sex culture. Or, yo, I'm into non-monogamy. Shout out to Coach Greg Adams, because Coach Greg Adams is very direct. He's not mixing anything. CGA tells you, yo, I'm into non-monogamy. You know what I'm saying? I don't give a fuck if you think I'm tricking. This is what I do. So I can't argue CGA. I can't shame CGA. I can't say he's being dishonest, because he's living his life. He's saying who he is, and he's successful at what he's doing with his game relative to him, right? So now when CGA goes live, or Coach Greg Adams goes live, shout out to CGA, and I go to his channel, I know what I'm expecting. So I can choose to either watch or leave. A lot of you niggas, you don't know, when we go watch your channel, we don't know what to expect when we watch your channel. We have to pay attention to the certain things you preach and say, okay, this nigga, he don't know what he's talking about. Oh, no, oh, nigga, he just adding on shit. Oh, okay, this nigga's a player. Shout out to some of the game niggas. Steve the Dean, they tell you what they in. All the game niggas, all the game niggas, they tell you who it is. They tell you they're in an open relationship. They tell you they're in non-monogamy. They tell you who they are. So you know what to expect when you watch Real Game No Theory. You know what they're going to talk about, so you have an option. A lot of niggas don't do that. In these YouTube spaces that I see, a lot of niggas don't do that. All right, let's continue. Weak game equal dirty American plus rebranding another man's house. Shame traditional men for living by their own standards in their own house. Use women's rebellion as a weapon to boost their own game. Relabel or rebrand the game to justify their lifestyle, even though they're still living under another man's system. Analogy. That's a mutiny. That's rebellion against the king in his own castle. Instead of building their own castle, they try to rewrite the rules inside another man's house. That's not strong game. That's weak game dressed up in manipulation. Right? You cannot speak about masculinity and manhood, and you're in somebody else's house teaching the women to rebel against those men, and then want to reshape masculinity to fit you. See, what has happened in our society now is because, especially in Black culture, a lot of the men you see today, they're influencing more of the younger men to be non-traditional because they understand that those men are going to grow up and influence society for the next generations. So they got to rebrand. So the younger men they're reprogramming the younger men to accept certain things that's going to be the destruction of our society. And then you have the women, Black men coming from single mother households where the women raise those men to be a certain way too, to accept 304s and shit. And then men reinforcing that. And that's a big problem. I'm saying, like, I'm afraid to see, because I'm 30 years old. So, I'm afraid to see what's going to be like when I'm 60 years old. And this is why I'm doing this content here. Respecting each other's game. A man with real game can say, I'm into non-monogamy. This is what I teach. If you want this lifestyle, this is how I move. But at the same time, respect traditional men, because at the end of the day, it's their house. It's living inside the freedoms they built. Traditional men should also respect the freedom of non-traditional men, as long as they're not trying to undermine the house. America was built on liberties, but also laws. Respect each other's choices, so long as it's not violating another man's rights. That's the balance, freedom with respect, right? So what I mean when I say that, especially in Black culture, you should not be talking about you're gonna fuck another man's wife or fucking another man's wife. What do you think the women are gonna think when you're doing that? The women gonna look at you, well, damn, so you gonna fuck your own homeboy wife? You gonna fuck another Black man's wife instead of getting your own wife? And you calling that player or being a Mac? So if you don't even respect your own brother, why should I, a Black woman, respect you and the other men? If you're willing to go if you're willing to treat your other Black man how white people used to treat us historically, why should I respect you? That's what the women think when y'all say that shit, when we engage in that shit. And y'all, unbeknownst to y'all, or known to a lot of you, or some of you, you teach the women to rebel you by not respecting each other. So this is the caveat. Non-traditional men are still living in a traditional man's house. America built on traditional structure, family, order, and hierarchy. That means traditional men have the right to critique or push back against men who undermine their system while benefiting from it. Subjectively, man to man, everyone deserves respect. But objectively, the system belongs to the builders. And what we do in society is we shame the builders by calling them lame, squares, and suckers, and emasculating them every day. What you think is going to eventually happen? And then shame them into keep building society, and then keep dating unruly women that don't match up to their expectation, while in their house benefiting from the shit that they built. So here's the point. A man has weak game if he's not being honest about who he is, and if he shames other men to make his lifestyle look valid in their house. Real game is authenticity, respect, and strength. If you're a player, be a player. If you're traditional, be traditional. Just don't try to rewrite another man's house to fit your rebellion, because that's not game. That's mutiny. And mutiny always gets crushed in the king's castle. Right? This is a big one that I know a lot of you player niggas use. Weak game equals blaming society. So we've already talked about weak game when men disrespect the house that other men built. We talked about weak game when men shame builders and producers. We talked about weak game when men aren't honest about who they are. Now let's talk about another form of weak game. When men blame society as an excuse for how they move. Let's go. Excuse. I don't go along with society. Right? When a man wants to convince a woman to go along with something she's not supposed to, he'll say, I don't follow society. Society is wrong. I do my own thing. On the surface, for airheads, it sounds rebellious, but in reality, it's a cop-out. Instead of owning his actions, he blames society to dirty Mac his way into the box. That's weak game. Because it's not leadership, it's manipulation. So you niggas just keep talking about society is wrong. You're dirty macking on society that men built to get access to that bitch that you want to fuck. What society really means. When we talk about society, we usually talk about patriarchal, structured discipline eras like the Victorian era, a time before feminism, wokeism, and modern confusion. A system men built where good women were courted, 304s and brothel women weren't being shown off as wives. Standards matter, right? So when a man says, I don't go along society, what he's really saying is, I don't want to live up to those standards. I want shortcuts. I want easy access. That's mutiny. Rebellion against the very house that gives man structure and authority. So let me break this down. All right. Let me go back. Let me see what I put down, right? What I used to do, like I said earlier, I used to write things down to look at my thoughts. So I'd make whole structured paragraph and essays, look at my thoughts, write them down, structure them, like similar to that. And then I used to go fact check them, like reading books, or I would go read information, go on Google. This was before ChatGPT ever existed. And I used to write them down, and I used to come on YouTube, and I used to do that on YouTube. Well, we have ChatGPT now, so it makes it a lot easier for me. And then I can go research the information and the sources from ChatGPT, and then go structure it in like a PDF type format. Shout out to Google Plus, right? Or Google Slides, my bad. Right. But yes, what's the shortcut? Because in a traditional society, if a man wanted the best type of woman, he had to be what? A gentleman. He had to work up that hierarchy to get there, to the best type of woman, right? Now, because of Marxism, feminism, and all that other stuff, you have now made it so that it's easier access to all women. And a lot of those women who were once traditional or once good women, they've been tricked into being 304s. And they've been tricked to rebel against their father, right? So now it's easier access for the lower tier of men to get to the women, right? This is why Angry Man, myself, Tommy Sotomayor, we get fought by the majority of the space is because we're trying to put back the traditional standard. And what niggas would say is like, yo, this is Tommy Sotomayor tells us a lot, which is funny. But they'd be like, well, you like to smash, and Tommy Sotomayor would be like, yeah, I want to smash. But Tommy Sotomayor understands that not everybody can be living his lifestyle. And he'll admit that his lifestyle is wrong, even though he's engaging in it. But what happens is that men, we speak for the objective collective. We don't speak subjectively just for ourselves. All right? We understand that objectively the structure must be maintained, and there must be law and order. And law and order is objective. So a lot of times when we speak on topics, we speak objectively. But because we're debating women and simp niggas and player niggas that identify with women, they keep flipping it to the subjective. Oh, that's how you dating. How you dating, nigga? You smash. No. Right? For example, big up Ninja Man. Right? Ninja Man, in a downside, he used to bang on used to rail against LGBT activities, those group of people, right? but his son turned out to be LGBT. And a lot of people say, well, Ninja Man, you're real against one thing, but your son is another thing. What people fail to realize is that his son has his own autonomy. And Ninja Man can still rail against certain things and not agree with certain things, even though his son is into it. He can disagree with his son. He can, banish his son. I forgot the word. Right? It's like a pastor, right? He could be railing against 3 or 4s. He could be railing against whatever. And his children can be that. But the pastor could come out and say, well, I didn't raise my kids to be that. I preach this, the same thing I preach to my congregation, I preach it to my children. But my children, they have to grow up and choose to follow my influence or their own autonomy. You understand? Right? So, this is where a lot of guys on the internet, where they try to trap you into that subjectivity and they make it about you. When most of this discussion is about how we're supposed to operate in society, how society is supposed to be structured, right? You understand? And that's objective thinking. And the other goofy arguments, because you niggas watching porn, so, you know what I'm saying, you watching porn and you watching, remember, a fantasy, right? That's like somebody saying, I'm going to go watch the Terminator now, and now I'm going to become a Terminator and go out there and be a Terminator. No. That's why it's a movie and entertainment. It's separate from real life. You don't go engage into the thing that you saw in the movie. You keep that separate. That's because a nigga's watching porn doesn't mean he expects his woman to be a porn star. It's a separation. But y'all don't know how to do that. This is why black culture is fucked. You don't know how to separate art from real life. Why this trick works? Women today are already in rebellion against traditional men. So when a weak man blames society, women eat it up because it already validates the rebellion. Example: a traditional woman says, "I'm saving myself for marriage." Weak man says, "See, that's society brainwashing you. I don't follow that. Live free, be independent, do you." He frames her discipline as a problem so he can lower her standards. That's not game. That's exploitation of rebellion, right? So a lot of you niggas do this, right? A chick, the men can say they don't like promiscuous women. A chick can be like, I want to be promiscuous. A player nigga will say, well, instead of him saying, well, maybe the other men might not value, but I'm into promiscuous women. Instead, what he'll say is, society, and don't go along with society, and society is wrong, which is dirty macking on society, as I explained, that the men built. As I explained earlier, is teaching that woman to rebel. And instead of just letting that woman go and finding a woman that wants to be promiscuous with him, he wants to manipulate her to lower her standards, which is dirty macking. You can't call me dirty macking if you're dirty macking. If you dirty macking on going to traditional men, because I know somebody in the back going like, oh, you dirty macking on the players, but you dirty macking against the man's house. Let's get it. Real game, owning your standard. A man with strong game says, this is how I live, this is what I want, this is what I want to do. He doesn't hide behind society or blame society. He doesn't need to convince a woman to betray her values. He finds a woman who already matches his values. If she wants to follow society's traditional standards, let her. She'll align with traditional men, because real game doesn't require excuses. Real game is ownership. So, this is what I mean when I say, niggas, when you dirty mac on society, you dirty mac on the traditional men that built it. If that woman wants to align with the society and those traditional men, let her choose. Just like you play niggas when you want a bitch to be a hoe, and you say, let her choose. Let her be free to pick to be a hoe. Well, let the bitch pick, let a lady or a good woman choose to pick to be a traditional wife to a traditional man. Just like you want us to allow that hoe to choose to be with you. So let's be clear. A man has weak game if he uses society as a scapegoat. Society isn't the enemy, especially when society was structured by men for men with discipline and standards. The truth is, if you don't want to follow those rules, own it. Say who you are, move how you move, but don't use society as a trick to shame women into rebellion or to excuse your shortcuts, because real game isn't rebellion. Real game is responsibility. the argument that traditional men are weak because they don't go with the flow of society only works if society is still aligned with the order. So somebody can flip that on me and be like, aren't you traditional men shaming other dudes, or aren't you traditional men? So if I'm a traditional guy, right, and the current society we're in is gynocentric, and I say I don't go along with society, that's not me rebelling. That's not me doing the same thing the player's doing. I'm saying what the player's doing. Because I'm a traditional nigga trying to maintain or follow the system of society built by traditional men. So I'm trying to rebel against current society that goes against tradition to maintain tradition. So it's not the same for niggas in the back that think you're smarter than me. Only works if society is still aligned with the order those men built. But the modern Western system is no longer patriarchal in structure. It's bureaucratic, gynocentric, and corporate driven. In other words, it's more centralized. It's not patriarchal anymore. It's more state. So when you say bureaucratic, that's what that means, right? The state is telling you what to do instead of men telling you what to do. Which that's an issue that gotta be discussed. White men, how the hell did you allow this capitalist patriarchy to become communist or Marxist? You can't blame black men for that. Because we weren't in the power to do shit. You made sure of that during the 80s and the 90s and the 70s and the early 19th centuries and the 1800s with Jim Crow. So, white men, you need something. Instead of you getting up on the internet and to shame Raja Jackson and to talk about Pookie and Ray Ray, you need to be talking about your own fuck-ups in this society. So a truly traditional man today can look at society and say, this is not my fault. This is not the same house my forefathers built. The laws of culture, the values no longer uphold male authority, family hierarchy, or responsibility, and balance with authority. Therefore, rejecting this society is not weakness, it's preservation. Right? Traditional men don't fit in with today's framework because the framework itself is corrupt and inverted. His refusal to comply isn't weak game. It's actually him refusing to play a rigged game that undermines his authority, devalues his investment, and destroys his household. That's the caveat most people miss. Society used to reflect patriarchal logic. A man investing in a family and community would get respect, authority, and cultural reinforcement. But today, a man can invest everything into a family and still have the state, media, and even his own woman turn against him because the structure doesn't protect him anymore. So, the fact that patriarchal men built it and the system can't benefit him, and you black niggas and white niggas, my bad, white crackers, agree to that and want to shame other men to keep dealing with that? The real weakness isn't the man who rejects the new system. The weakness is the man who knows it's rigged against him, sees how it destroys the house, but still complies because he wants validation from that same system. He wants pussy from that same system too. Old versus new society. In the past, society was built on patriarchal instruction. Traditional men built and maintained it. And in return, they received respect, authority, and security for their investment in family and community. The system reflected reinforced masculine responsibility and leadership. So for any feminists in the back, the reason why there's a patriarchy because the men fought and died for it. So shut up. Present day contrast. Today's society is no longer patriarchal. It's bureaucratic, gynocentric, and corporate driven. Male authority in the home is undermined by laws, media narratives, and cultural expectations. And what's the cultural expectations today? They expect a man to be a sucker or to be a simp, or as the angry man would describe it, like a pack mule or some kind of like slave or something, right? A man can invest everything into his family and still lose it all through divorce, courts, child custody, laws, and shifting gender dynamics, right? So the men of today who want to be traditional, they have a right to step away from the market. They have a right to say, shit, I'm investing into things and I'm not getting a return on my investment. As a matter of fact, I'm getting punished for investing in this. As opposed to the past, when they invested into something, they got a definite return from it. Why traditional men reject the modern framework? A truly traditional man recognizes that today's system is not the same as his forefathers built. He says, "This is not my house anymore. The walls are here, but the foundation has been replaced." Therefore, rejecting modern society is not weakness, it's self preservation. The real weakness, the weak man is not the one who refuses to comply. The weak man is the one who sees the game as it's rigged against him, sees that it destroys his house. It still goes along with it just to gain validation from the system. So I basically said what I said earlier, right? Weak game, not simply honest or confidence, missing. It's when a man builds his approach on weak soil, meaning he validates dysfunction patterns or builds on unstable foundation. Example, men who chase validation from women, men who operate from desperation, or men who avoid accountability and structure. Strong game, rooting in strength, leadership, accountability, and discipline. A man operates with standards and doesn't bend to dysfunction. He builds on strong soil, meaning principle, order, and respect. Strong game is not dependent on the woman, what women want. It's about what works long term to build family, community, and legacy. So, in other words, game is not doing what women want or leading based upon what women want. Game is not even about, when you talk about objectively, game is not even about your what your personal feelings are, right? Or your vices you want to engage in. Game objectively, when you talk about men building a structure, is about doing the things you know, even though you may not like it, is going to maintain order, law, and structure in the long run. Right? Strong game, but in weakness. Some men present strong traits, confidence, masculinity, charisma, but the soul underneath is weak. Example, Silk, as I described before, confident, charming, masculine on the outside, but ultimately validating dysfunction, preserving the sex economy and undermining tradition. This is dangerous because it looks like strength but functions like weakness. Women often get confused here because packaging looks strong, but the foundation is weak. That's what I mean by that. A lot of niggas get on YouTube and they hide behind traditional traits. They hide behind traditional masculinity. What's one of the traits? Like I said earlier, being honest about who they are, right? But underneath it, if you hear them, pay attention to them real close, they'll say things that benefit 304s. They'll say shit like, "You're insecure because you don't want a promiscuous woman." Mind you, they're telling you how you should operate within your rules. And mind you, that's the same shit feminist women say. That's the same shit rebellious women say. So that's what I mean. Right? Old patriarchal structure, right? So I don't have to read that. That's right. Right. A man must differentiate between being weak because he avoids responsibility, being strong because he refuses to compromise with dysfunction. Modern society tries to blur that line, shaming traditional men as if they are outdated or weak. But the truth is, holding fast to principles when the world has abandoned them is the ultimate test and strength. So, in a game we call America of tradition, the traditional men that say, "I refuse not to bow down to non monogamy, promiscuity, or any shit that goes against the house and structure that my forefathers built," you have the most game because you're not allowing a player, pimp, or Mac to influence you into something you know is wrong for you and you know is wrong for the overall for society in general because you can see what's going wrong. Right? Weak game versus strong game. All right, I think that's. I think. Oh no. So I'm gonna do this. Rooted in earned authority, discipline, and consistent action. Historically aligned with traditional men who built law, order, and structure. Comes from holding women accountable, setting standards, and leading. Weak game. Rooted in subjectivity and rebounding of failure. A man says, "Because I don't hold women accountable, you're weak if you do." He projects his own lack of discipline onto other men. Instead of building structure, he relies on the illusion of strength, alpha branding, right? So a lot of niggas that's on here talking about alpha and beta, They don't know what they're talking about with that hierarchy. And I might show a little bit of it on here, but I want to do a separate video about the different structures of alpha, beta, zeta, and all that stuff, and how they play their parts in society, right? Um, but a lot of niggas on here, because they, in their subjective life, they don't hold women accountable. They'll say you're weak for not doing what they do. If you're not doing what they do, even though traditionally, because objectively men hold women, objectively and subjectively, men held women accountable. You didn't see a lot of the shit you're seeing there now with women. All right. Just because you don't do it in your subjective life relative to you doesn't mean other men should stop doing it. Shouldn't hold women accountable. If you don't want to hold women accountable, then do that. But don't shame other men for doing it. Doing something that you don't have the game or the capacity or capability to do. Misuse of alpha and beta language. Men who enforce standards produce functioning societies. Today, men who avoid accountability call that same discipline weak. Subjective redefining. Men who lack access to women rebrand masculinity to fit their failures. They weaponize labels alpha and beta to shame men who expected traditional standards. True beta definition. A beta is not weak. He is second in command. Strong masculine role in hierarchy. Weakness is not in being beta. Weakness is being inconsistent, unprincipled, or pander. So I've seen alphas do this. And then I've seen betas challenge that alpha and maintain strong masculine structure here on the internet and in real life. Because the thing we don't know is that the beta, he's masculine like the alpha. It's just that he's second in command to the alpha. And in cases where the alpha is not doing what he's supposed to be doing, he's slipping up, the beta can challenge that alpha and take his position and assume that leadership role and then he'll raise or train another alpha to take that position. Proper hierarchy. A lot of the niggas who talk about alpha and beta, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You're just using it to manipulate men so they can act a certain way. What you're doing is you're benefiting through your force, is what you're doing. It's a way to disarm men to pick an open relationship bitches. That's what it is. Like I said earlier, to disarm and defang you, to accept certain things into your life that's not good for you. Right. Subjective men attack traditional standards. But most men enforce standards. So competition for women, right? When most women enforce standards, undisciplined men get left behind. Hope they redefine strength in their favor and call accountability weak. That's a way to disarm a tool men use to hold women in line, right? So without that tool, women do what they want to do, and the lower tier, weaker men get access to them, right? The rebranding of failure. They frame themselves as more secure because they don't enforce discipline. In truth, they're projecting weakness by avoiding responsibility, right? Result, society becomes disordered when women face no accountability, like you see now. Weak men redefine masculinity not to lead, but to excuse dysfunction. So I actually did. So this is going to be a brief thing, and then I want to do a separate video. Male hierarchy, structure, and function. Alpha, function, leader of the group, decision maker, protector, authority figure. Objective, maintain order, provide vision, enforce structure, strength, confidence, dominance, respect, ability to lead men and attract women. Can fall into arrogance, dictatorship, or lose authority if it doesn't deliver, right? So that's the alpha. Beta, function and command, loyal lieutenant or enforcer. Objective, support the alpha, maintain structure, ensure stability in the group. Strength, reliable, masculine, capable, and respected, the glue that holds this hierarchy together. Often misrepresented as weak, but in truth, he's only weaker than the alpha, not weak overall. So he's weak as far as his position. He's not weaker as far as strength and capability when it comes to the alpha, right? Then you got the sigma, delta. The delta, this is the delta. The men who are deltas, they're the ones that keeping society going. If it wasn't for the delta, you would have no society, right? Then you have the gamma, then you have the omega. See, it's the zeta niggas and the omega niggas that are causing problems. And the gamma niggas, because they're not getting access to the women like the beta, sigma, and the alpha. Now the delta niggas now, right? These are the men you see on YouTube that have honest critique. They're honestly concerned because they're not getting. They're charged with protecting and maintaining society, but they're being emasculated. So the deltas are overlooked. They're not being spoken for. They're the silent majority that's maintaining society, but they get disrespected every day. And what happens is now, and it's between the deltas and the betas that are making the complaints on the internet. And so what happens is the alpha niggas come out and shame the delta and the beta niggas. But with the sigma niggas, like myself, they'll come out and they'll say, nah, call on alpha. You got this, the deltas and the betas have an actual complaint. But then you have the extreme niggas that's fucking up the arguments, like with the manosphere, right? The manosphere had a lot of deltas and betas in it. And then you have sigmas that were there, like Kevin Samuels and Angry Man, and some alphas that was there, right? But what happened was you had a lot of lower tier men like the Omega, the Zeta male, but he's less common though, right? You had the Omega, Gamma, and Zeta niggas, and I think they came from the PUA. You know what I think happened? The black manosphere was gaining traction. The black manosphere was doing their thing. I think what happened was the white manosphere attacked that shit and took a lot of the token points from Angry Man, Kevin Samuels, and a lot of those brothers that was there, Tommy Sotomayor, and they put negative shit on it and made them shits extreme. This is where you get red pill rage from. And I think that distorted or took away from the argument that a lot of the deltas and the beta niggas was making. All right. So, I'm going to do a video about that tomorrow. But anyway, this was an episode of Who Has Weak Game, Who Has Strong Game. All right. Hopefully in this video, I dispelled a lot of the nonsense I see on YouTube and out in the world. The purpose of why I do this video is to put things back in the order of tradition, right? Because we have too much of the other shit going on, right? And a lot of guys, they're afraid to challenge it. They're afraid to challenge it for whatever reason. But anyway, this is Kid Shorty Gaming Nation. Like, share, and subscribe. I'm out.